Hello everybody. I'm happy to have this presentation for the members of the International Association of Theatre Critics in Taiwan, as well as other audience members that will watch it. My name is Jeton Neziraj and I am playwright and artistic director of Chandra Multimedia, a theatre organization based in Pristina, Kosovo. Today I'm going to briefly talk about the theatre scene in Kosovo and in the region of Southeastern Europe, but I hope I can continue this dialogue and conversation with you in the upcoming months and years. Kosovo's theatre started quite late. The first plays by Albanian authors from Kosovo were written only after the Second World War. Theatres at that period gathered enthusiastic amateurs, while the performances at that initial phase were mainly concerned with themes of the partisan war and the reconstruction of the socialist country that was Yugoslavia and which no longer exists. So Kosovo was part of this former Yugoslavia as one of the 8 constitutional republics and territories. The beginning of the disintegration of Yugoslavia started in Kosovo in the late 80s. Political demands for freedom and equality made by Kosovo Albanians were violently suppressed by the Serbian authorities. In the early 90s, Serbia, led by the dictator Milosevic, was sending police and military forces to Kosovo to suppress the demands of Kosovo Albanians. At the beginning of the 90s, Albanian school children and university students were expelled from school buildings because they refused to follow the curriculum imposed by the Serbian Milosevic regime of that period. This was a time of big division between Albanian and Serbian society in Kosovo. Statistically, Albanians constituted a little over 90% of Kosovo population, Serbs only about 7%, yet the minority had control and were controlling all the public institutions, including the theatres. The majority of theatres were either closed or placed under the management of Milosevic officials, while most of the Albanian actors and other creative staff, technical staff, were fired from those theatres. For almost 10 years, these theatres produced only a few plays in Albanian. Basically, theatre was no longer existing for that period of 10 years. The 90s were not the best time for the theatre. They were the years when war fever gripped us all. The wars of the former Yugoslavia had begun, first in Bosnia and Herzegovina and then in Croatia. And in Kosovo, the violence and oppression of the Serbian regime against Albanians was unbearable. We did our theatre studies in private houses after Milosevic functionaries had expelled us from public university buildings. We were not just symbolically, but also practically a parallel generation, even a parallel society. The cultural history of Kosovo between 92 and 99 might be best reflected by the example of the Dodona Theatre, a very small theatre for children and young people founded in 92 and located in suburbs of Pristina. Until 99, Dodona Theatre was the only cultural institution in Kosovo that could operate for an Albanian audience. In the atmosphere of violence that prevailed outside, the Dodona Theatre remained a small oasis, a space where people could breathe freely and feel human dignity, a space where some type of spiritual resistance was performed and practiced. So this theatre was producing for all ages and for different people, starting from children, but also a place for adults, and also was organizing several other cultural events, including book promotions, exhibitions. So it became a real hub for the culture, for the Albanian culture in that period. During the war in 98-99, most of the artists who had worked in theatres in Kosovo were forcibly expelled from Kosovo, as were about 1 million Kosovo Albanians. So artists, majority of them were living as refugees in refugee camps in Macedonia or in Albania. After the war in 1999, when the war was ended, Albanian population, Albanian refugees started to return home, and so it was the same with the theater artists. So they started to come back to their homes, and they started to build their cultural institutions, including theaters. Theater infrastructure was damaged heavily, including the building of the National Theater that was destroyed because of the bombs that were thrown nearby in the city. After the war, theater in Kosovo played an important role. In several cases, it produced and initiated substantial debates about Kosovo society and politics. Some of the plays about identity, multiculturalism, Serb-Albanian dialogue and reconciliation, war crimes or corruption have initiated strong debates within intellectual circles in Kosovo, and as a result, the theater has become a powerful promoter of democratic development of the country. One of the few independent theater companies that has continuously produced plays during these 20 years after the war in Kosovo is Qendra Multimedia. Today, Qendra Multimedia, it is considered as one of the most successful independent companies in the Southeastern Europe. Qendra has carried out dozens of important theatrical projects, collaborating and co-producing plays with internationally renowned theaters, including La Mama in New York, Volksbühne in Berlin, and several other theaters and festivals across Europe. Qendra Multimedia performances have been touring to over 100 festivals and theaters in Europe and in the USA. Coming from a country that is poor and isolated as Kosovo, exchange and collaboration with artists and partner theaters from Europe and the world, it's not just an artistic act, but also a political act. Qendra is undoubtedly one of the most active theater organizations in the Balkans. Our theater productions aim to liberate the audience from the traumas of the past and the fear of facing the present difficult problems. We try to exercise democracy on stage, and we try to stimulate in our audiences the need for more freedom and for more rights and social equality. Our fight or battle is to convince our war-traumatized societies that they have the right to seek and fight for normality. Kosovo theater is fresh in its aesthetic and bold in dealing with various political topics. Since 2008, when Kosovo declared its independence, the theater has become the forefront of some most substantial social and political debates. Theater creators in Kosovo work with what they have. First of all, they use original stories, but also the power of the actors. So I have to admit that we have wonderful actors. We simply focus on political topics, on Kosovo or European topics, and we tell them on our own way, straightforwardly, with a lot of humor, and often politically incorrect. Therefore, for several shows that we have organized in Pristina or elsewhere in Kosovo, the presence of the police was necessary. I wouldn't call it a wave of Kosovo theater, but good things have begun to happen in recent years. We have launched a Kosovo Theater Showcase, a platform where every year we show the selectors of European theater festivals and journalists the theater productions from Kosovo and from the region. Usually we invite some 10 to 15 shows, mostly from Kosovo of the actual year, but also we invite 1 or 2 shows either from Serbia or from Greece or from Albania or from other European countries. Within Kosovo Theater Showcase, several other panels and debates are organized, including a workshop on theater criticism. So we basically invite professional theater critics to work with a group of young wannabe theater critics. Those might seem to be small steps, but they are actually important for a theater scene that has been destroyed, powerless, and most isolated one in Europe. When I say isolated, you have to have in mind that Kosovo citizens, including Kosovo artists, need to obtain visa in order to travel to other European countries. And this process is often very complicated. It demands time, it demands money, and lots of paperwork. Those last years, several theaters in Kosovo started organizing this Kosovo Theater Showcase. It is a joint cooperation of Cendra Multimedia and several other theaters in Kosovo. And the festival in itself aims to connect this scene within Kosovo, but also to promote it internationally to the different theater festivals and in the region. We believe that European theater can learn and benefit from the vitality and freshness of Kosovo theater. And the result of this showcase are there, very visible. Dozens of articles and reviews have been written in the international press. Many invitations by different festivals have been received, and several cooperations have been initiated, either within local artists or in relation to the international scene. In the last edition, we hosted around 70 international guests, while this edition of 2023, we expect to have around 130 international guests. And this year, it will be the 6th edition, and the theater showcase will happen from 24 to 29. And among many of those international guests, we are hosting the caravan of the theater network IETM. This year, the center of the showcase program will be the play Negotiating Peace, which Cendra Multimedia is co-producing with at least 7 international theater partners from Norway, from Bosnia-Herzegovina, from Czech Republic, from Estonia, from Italy, from Germany, from Serbia, and elsewhere. For those over 20 years after the war, theater in Kosovo is playing a crucial role in regional cooperation as well, and in reconciliation process. So the post-war landscape of the region is not that dark as it might seem from outside. Dozens of excellent theater initiatives have been realized between Serbian and Albanian artists, which have contributed to the peace between those two peoples, to the creation of a more tolerant climate, and in general to the social and political emancipation of both Albanian and Serbian societies in Kosovo and in Serbia. Of course, the trumpets of the blind nationalists have constantly echoed in opposition to those regional initiatives and this cultural dialogue that was initiated between Kosovo and Serbian artists after the war. In many cases, the police presence was needed when guest performances from Kosovo were presented in Serbia or vice versa. Most politicians, of course, they were not interested in cooperation or in this type of regional cooperation or in any kind of cooperation that could bring normality and long-term peace. But the good news is that more people in Kosovo, in Serbia, in Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in the region are understanding that, are beginning to realize that their enemies are not Serbs, not Albanians or Croats, but the common enemy is the corrupt political class and the nationalists that, of course, are active in all those countries of former Yugoslavia. So to conclude, during the over 70 years of its existence, theater in Kosovo has played an extraordinary cultural, social and political role. It remains the most convincing and accurate chronicle of the development of society and the precise examiner of the dramas and traumas of this society. Theatre in Kosovo, it was an important promoter and articulator of the demands and national aspirations of Kosovo Albanians for equality, national liberation, and the construction of the new identity. I would warmly invite all of you to come and be our guest at the Kosovo Theatre Showcase in October 2023, as well as I warmly invite you to look at the webpage of Chandra Multimedia, as well as at the webpage of C Stage platform, a newly initiative in which we launched a year ago, through which we are trying to connect the regional scene and to enable regional artists to communicate with each other and promote this scene locally, regionally, and internationally. The C Stage platform is all in English, and you can find excellent materials in there on the theater scenes of Serbia, of Croatia, of Kosovo. Thank you very much.